What up, everybody? I'm Big Waz,
And I'm Nando Vila.
and we are the Woke Bros. Each week, we bring you guys lefty news from a lefty perspective, man. What does that mean? That means news from the perspective of working people like you and I.
Yeah, do you think the Republicans suck? And do you think that the Democrats also suck? Well, you're going to like our show because we think they both suck.
Absolutely. So if you want the news, all Skrilla, no filler, each and every Thursday, please subscribe, rate, review wherever you get podcasts, because the Woke Bros has their own individual podcast feed. Make sure you look up the Woke Bros, subscribe to us, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars, and say that we're the greatest of all time. See you guys soon.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Waz, aka Wozni Lambre. My man Nando Vila is on a Spanish vacation. He's traversing from Madrid to Barcelona to Ibiza. He's doing everything in between. This man is on a jaunt, as they say. So we wish him all the best on his vacation. But luckily for us, this week we have an amazing, wonderful stand-in. My brother, Ben Burgis. What's going on, big dog?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. This is awesome.
Of course, man. Honestly, this being the 1-year anniversary of the passing of our brother Michael Brooks, and you're somebody who I was fortunate enough to meet through Mike, and who I'm proud to say have been able to develop a friendship with because of that connection. I thought it would be a good time to have you on, and we could discuss Mike and his legacy, and the everlasting impact that he left on this earth towards the end of the show. But first, honestly, I wanted to have you on because right now the biggest thing happening in politics is what's going on with this infrastructure bill. Basically, are they going to do it bipartisan with the fake centrist Republicans? Are they just going to ram it down their throats, as they should? Which is what the Republicans would do in their the Republicans wouldn't be like, let's go out of our way for a compromise with the Dems. They'd be like, oh, we can do this by ourselves. Fuck out of here. That's like whatever. We'll get into that. But I did want to talk to you because I just, I'm interested to know how you feel as far as how they've gone about selling this thing. Like that day that Joe Biden has his grand press conference in cinema and mansion behind him to almost signal this will be the worst bill possible, right? To, Bernie coming out and being like, listen, man, this thing needs to be $3.5 trillion. And we need to ram a bunch of goodies through this thing for our people. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the delicate dance that these guys have been playing with the infrastructure bill.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of very good stuff in this as proposed. Like, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. I mean, if it does go bipartisan, then obviously, it would get a lot worse. If that's how that works. But right now, I mean, it doesn't like it's, I mean, some of the, I mean, I hate that they do these things as tax credits, like that's how you have to do it all. You can't just give people money, it has to be stupid. But the child tax credit's really good. Like that would help people a lot. I mean, certainly the community college stuff, I don't think they're actually, I think it's like a little unclear, but I don't think they're going quite as far as what Biden said in his platform, which was that, community colleges could be free basically, but certainly a lot more support for it. And hey, I didn't think that was going to happen at all. I mean, I just thought that's like, yeah, okay, that's something that like Democrats say when they're running for president, and then they don't actually do it, right? I mean, Obama said the same thing at one point. Like it doesn't necessarily mean anything, when it's on the campaign trail, but there are, there's a lot of good stuff here, and if it actually happened, this would be great. I mean, I think that some people maybe on the left are a little too I mean, I don't want to downplay, the efforts of my beloved grandfather Bernie Sanders, as budget chair and everything. I mean, obviously he did have a stamp on this, but like also, I think that sometimes maybe like on the left we're a little too eager to say like, oh, we did this, right? Like we pressured like Biden and moved him to the left, and that's why it happened. It's like, no, I think that there's like more spending that's at least being considered and that has already happened in some ways, just because like we're in a crazy unprecedented crisis. So like, of course there is. I mean, like even the Republican negotiating positions, as terrible as they are, like aren't, they're willing to spend more money than they would have like 2 years ago.
Yeah, and it feels like when the Dems come out and they have Bernie be the face of it, like, look, we could pass something for 3.5 trillion on our own, right?
Right.
Which is a way of explaining to the Republicans, like, yo, y'all don't really have the upper hand here for real. I think that's what that sort of show of force is to be, is like the sicko socialist crazy commie scumbag Bernie Sanders comes out and says, I want 3.5. You guys tried to peddle this 1.2 crap. I want 3.5. I think that's, it's gamesmanship on the part of the.
Yeah, so it's like we're going to say, oh, you don't like, you're not going to work with us at all. Well, hey, I mean, hey, we can just do the bill that Bernie wants,
Which, I love it. I love the idea that they're positioning Bernie, the Bernie-crats, as the only alternative to this bipartisan crap that they're trying to push. And, I want to talk to you about this, because the bipartisan nonsense is literally what's holding it up. The cinemas and the mansions of it all. And I remember reading a tweet thread from this Washington Post homie who's like, yo, you know why this is crap? When the Republicans had control of the Senate, McConnell put stuff to a vote and was like, oh, Susan Collins, you're gonna go against this Republican thing? Let's see you do it again and again and again, right? Like, actually put these people in a position where they have to give no votes to very important Democratic Party agenda items. Hello, that's how politics are supposed to work. Joe Manchin, you claim to be a Democrat, Kristen Sinema, and all I ever hear about is party unity and this person was on the team and blah, 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 blah. Put it to the test. How many Democratic Party agenda items are you going to personally throw yourself in front of and still curry favor within the party? I would like to see Chuck Schumer lead. Is that too much to ask?
No, it's not. And I mean, the idea like that, I mean, I understand saying that like what we would like to be true about like Manchin, that like there could be some like wonderful left wing, like primary person who could replace him, like next time or whatever. That's probably not true. That lots of his constituents, like that he's, quote unquote independent, and they, might not have like the most progressive views on this or that issue. But like, I don't know, the idea that infrastructure isn't going to be popular in West Virginia, like that doesn't ring true at all.
Like, yeah, and again, you're gonna throw your body in front of the American Jobs Act,
right?
In your poor ass state, Joe Biden. I mean,
Yeah,
excuse me, Joe Manchin. Like this, it just seems preposterous. A lot of this, I'm not gonna lie, Ben, sometimes seems like a dog and pony show. We saw it because it kind of just is. We saw it with the COVID spending plan, where we did the dog and pony show about bipartisanship, and then it came down to, and Joe Manchin did do his tough talk about bipartisan and blah, blah, blah. And ultimately he ended up voting for it. But then the flip side of it, Mitch McConnell goes to Kentucky and brags about a thing that he voted against and says, look, you're getting money, which is a good thing, but it might be too much. But like, he was so tongue twisted, because it's so obviously popular. It's so obviously what the people need and the people want. And all of these concerns about deficit and inflation is crap. It's not rooted in any data. It's not rooted in any research or empirical evidence. It's rooted in outdated economist sort of orthodoxy from the 1970s when we had a gas shortage. And it just seems preposterous that these guys wouldn't do the obvious thing and reap the rewards of doing so obviously popular.
Yeah. Do you ever read those Rick Perlstein books? The
no, I never have.
Okay, yeah. So I've been very, very slowly reading the last one. It's like, it's like a phone book.
Is that the Reagan joint?
Yeah, Reagan Land.
Okay.
Yep, that's the one. And he goes through kind of like the origins of a lot of that like conservative, economic orthodoxy of the 70s. And basically like the long and the short of it is they were making shit up, that they had there was this guy Laffer who had, this thing that became really famous, the Laffer curve, about supposedly what the relationship is between like, taxes and productivity and whatever. It's like literally something that's like not based on a study or anything. He just like wrote it down on like a bar napkin or something. And it became a famous thing, so, I mean, no surprises there, I guess, but I mean, it is just kind of amazing to read about it all. I mean, I think that, again, whether this infrastructure bill ends up happening or not, I mean, they are going to have to, like, it's not because, like, we, like, we're so amazing and influential and we pulled them left or whatever. But I mean, I think just given, like, the extent of the crisis, given how bad things are, given that, like, some of the spending, I mean, like you just need, like, just for the, like, I mean, forget anything else. I mean, just to get like, the economy moving and, and all that stuff, like you really do need to do some of this stuff. So I think that some of it's going to happen. I mean, I think the better question is like how much of this stuff becomes not just like, okay, we're going to do this for like, this year or a couple years, but like permanent programs that people can really count on, that like to help them, like, year to year, like without like not just like to tide people over a little bit right now.
And it makes you wonder why that's not the route. I hate to get all conspiratorial about the Democrats and their leadership, but how can the route not be to put something in their hands, make it permanent and watch it grow in popularity, i.e., I don't know, Obamacare, which sucks.
Sure.
Okay. And has done nothing but grow in popularity because it's so obviously helped people.
Yeah, right.
It's so obviously helped people, and it was so unpopular at the time. But over the course of time, because you made, you put mechanisms in there that forced it to be more permanent, people were just like, yo, nah, we can't get rid of pre-existing conditions. We can't get rid of, keeping my kid on the insurance plan for longer than was normally the case. We can't get rid of all of this stuff, right? It's so obvious what needs to be done. And, I feel like we often do these things in reverse, and it's stupid, meaning we try to come up with ways to change the hearts and minds and then be like that. Now we can do policy on it because we won the hearts and minds of of our constituents instead of just being like, no, just do the policy and watch people get on board. It happens every time.
Totally. And I mean, like the ridiculous thing about Obamacare was that so much of that stuff didn't even kick in for, years, right? After it was passed. Like in a weird way, it's almost like Obama and Biden and all those guys back then. Like, I mean, it almost felt like they forgot that elections existed, that they were going to have to like, win the midterms and win the next, presidency. Like, it was just like, oh, we're in power forever now, so we can do this. We can do this like complicated technocratic thing that's hard to explain, and a lot of it's not going to even kick in until like long after the next election. And it'll be fine because it'll be good in the long run, whereas like what you really want is, I mean, like you said about hearts and minds, I mean, forget, if what you want is that like people can see directly that you've made their lives better somehow, that like, oh yeah, right. My cousin has a job now. He wouldn't if you hadn't, if you hadn't passed this thing. I don't have to worry about, about losing my health insurance now, whatever. Like that's the stuff, that's the stuff that's actually going to win the hearts and minds, is making, is delivering material improvements to people's lives. That because people vote based on all the secondary stuff, like because they don't really believe that anything's going to change
Right.
in their lives. Because like you might as well.
And the secondary stuff being critical race theory,
Exactly, yeah.
trans bathroom bills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's obvious what ends up taking the place of these bread and butter issues is the culture war crap.
No, exactly. Like nobody's gonna like people. I mean, look, maybe if somebody, like, there are tons of people who might like believe some stupid bullshit that they're told about, like how, like, whatever, like, trans people, being allowed to use the bathroom is going to lead to like whatever horrible thing it's going to lead to. There are tons of people who, yeah, maybe they'd go along with that if they're told. I was like, oh, okay, but also, like, they want to be paid more money. They want to have, like, healthcare and whatever. And at least if, like, there was a clear choice, like, okay, which one do you care more about, right? Like, do you care more about the bathrooms or do you care more about having healthcare? Like, then, I don't know that, like, we win every single one of those people, but, like, I think we get a lot of them, right? Like if it really came down to it, that, like, that was clearly the choice, not like, well, I don't really think that, like a lot of people, I mean, even among Democratic voters, this is a huge problem. Like, why did Biden win the Democratic nomination? It's not because people liked his policies better than Bernie. They were like every one of those states on Super Tuesday, the exit polls said that most Democratic voters wanted Medicare for all, and Biden was the only one who wasn't even like pretending to kind of sort of be trying to square the circle, some Medicare for all who want it thing. So, like, why did they go for Biden instead of Bernie? Well, I think most people don't really believe that anything's going to change as a matter of voting, because their whole life experience is that that's just not going to happen. And so they think, well, I'm going to vote based on like things that are more real to me, because I think they might actually, it's like, if they think, I think this is wrong. I think Biden just got lucky with COVID, but like, if they thought that like Biden was going to be, a stronger candidate to beat Trump, it's like, well, okay, whether Donald Trump is president or not, that sounds like it might change, right? All this bigger economic stuff, probably that's not really going to change, because it never has. It's the same thing with like the UK, that like, Jeremy Corbyn could give people a Christmas wish list of like 20 things that all sounded great, right? And I'm sure most voters liked, the idea of doing those things. But like, bottom line, if what they took seriously was, okay, is Brexit going to happen or not, right? Like that sounds like something that could really change. So I think that's a huge problem, even for Democratic voters. And yeah, I think there are a lot of people who, can, like, if they basically think that their lives are going to be just as financially precarious as ever, that nothing's going to change materially for them one way or the other, then yeah, they'll hear the siren song of all this bullshit about like, oh, they're trying to, teach critical race theory to your kids. The trans people are going to be in the bathrooms, like whatever.
And by the way, they're right in the sense that nobody has delivered a goddamn thing for them as far as promises. I know Barry has become a whipping boy on this podcast, but the bottom line is this guy had enormous popularity. He rode in on a huge wave of enthusiasm, and he delivered the most milquetoast agenda that was possible under those circumstances. Like, there was nothing ambitious about what he did. Nothing whatsoever. It was literally the most boring and scared versions of every single policy that he did, mainly Obamacare, right? Like, it was just like, oh, a big give back to the pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies, excuse me. Like this, so when the people say, yo, I saw this already, I saw this song and dance, Bernie promised a revolution. Y'all remember Obama?
Right, exactly.
Or, hey, man, you could say to some Trump voters, you don't remember Trump cleaning the swamp, all of that? It's all bullshit.
Trump,
These guys.
Trump went to West Virginia and said he was going to bring the mining jobs back. I mean, they're actually less now than there were then.
Yeah. So, obviously, all eyes are on what's going on with the infrastructure bill. Obviously, I know you're watching it closely. I just wanted to keep the listeners updated as to where we were at right now. We're still in dog and pony show mode. We're not in votes counting mode when it comes to the bipartisan stuff or just being like, screw it, we're ramming this through via budget reconciliation. So you guys stay tuned.
Which by the way, nobody remembers this, but they could have done that for Obamacare, get the public option. Like that was like for like a day that was being talked about. They could have passed it through because they ended up having to pass the whole thing through reconciliation anyway. But like the excuse for ditching the public option is they didn't have the votes.
Right, we didn't have Joe cocksucking Lieberman.
yeah, exactly. Right. But like it was like, oh, we don't have like 60 votes for the public option, so we can't do that. We'll have to take that out. And it was like, oh, I guess we don't have 60 votes anyway, right? So we'll just pass the whole thing through reconciliation. And then like there was never really a good explanation for why the public option didn't go back in then. And I think Joe Biden kind of like, seemed to admit at one point that they kind of like given that up in early negotiations anyway, which is just like whatever. I mean, the point I guess the only point I really make here is just that I think it's good, that Biden's proposing all this stuff now. I would love for this to be passed like as is, right? But like I don't know. I guess you just like I don't want to ever forget how much these people suck. Like it's not. Right. They're not.
Never underestimate the Democrats' chance to miss an opportunity. They will always do it. So yeah, let's stay tuned for that and keep our fingers crossed. No proper way to segue into our next topic, man. But yesterday we're taping this on a Wednesday afternoon. Yesterday marked the 1 year anniversary of the passing of our brother Michael Brooks, champion of leftist politics, man of the people, honestly. Guy who dedicated everything that he was doing, put all of his gifts and talents into trying to advance the cause of normal working people at every turn. Like I said, me and you became connected and formed a friendship via our connection with Mike. So I did definitely want to have you on. I know you were on Majority Report yesterday. Just to talk briefly about, if you will, just about Mike and his legacy and the work that he was trying to do and the lessons that we could all take from it.
Yeah, I mean, one way of connecting the two subjects is if you saw there was something that was actually published in Jacobin yesterday, which is an article that Michael. By the way, it totally doesn't matter, but this is interesting to me that you and Nando are the only two people I know who called him Mike. Everybody else seemed to be Michael. I mean, even his girlfriend, I think, was always said Michael. But
I think he insisted upon it. It was just I just don't call anybody Michael.
Fair enough, but yeah, he got. So 2 years ago, he was asked to write an article for Esquire magazine, and they didn't end up running it, but it was the idea of the article, and this is where it connects to what we're just talking about, is that Trump had just proposed these like huge cuts to SNAP, the supplemental nutritional system, basically what most people call food stamps.
Welfare, yep.
And so it was kind of a reaction to that, and it was got into some of his personal history, and I'm not totally they, like I said, they kind of ended up, they asked for it, they didn't end up running it. I think that it was probably like I don't know. I think it was probably more like stridently socialist than they thought it would be, like originally.
Not surprising.
Not surprising. I think he probably talked more shit about Democrats in there than they thought he would, but I remember, like, at the time, I was, I did a lot of, back then, like when he was writing something, like I do a lot of kind of like editing and commenting, and we go back and forth on it. So he was sending me that. I remember I was actually driving across country because this is when we were moving to Atlanta, but every time I get a new draft of this thing, I'd like pull into a rest stop and read over it and send him comments, because I was excited about it. And then yesterday, I don't know, a couple days ago, I was thinking about that article again, and I sent it to Bhaskar, and he, talked to the family and got permission, and he, published it in Jacobin yesterday as like a kind of, tribute on the 1-year anniversary. And in that article, Michael talks, like, there's some very like visceral personal stuff in there that isn't really in anything else that he wrote, that I'm familiar with. Like he talks about, the experience of like being a kid, and like, he says when you get to be about like 13 or 14 and you start to notice stuff, that you hadn't really noticed before. And he'd, get really self-conscious about being at the grocery store when his mom would pull out the bridge card, to pay for the groceries, and and kind of being like very aware of how people were looking at them or whatever. And there's
Hey, I come from the era of actual food stamps where they gave you that off-color money to spend at the store. Like, literally, you could see that it wasn't $1. It was
right.
fake money. Like, talk about ostracizing folks, man. It was so, and the money was like orange. It was like white and orange and stuff. Like, it was, I remember that distinctly, going to the store and having to pay with those things.
Yeah, right. And so like that's a lot of what the article is about the way, obviously the cruelty of the Trump proposal, but also also the way that back in the era when he was growing up, and he's got some nice details in there about like being afraid that conservatives were going to ban Howard Stern and stuff like that, but he had back in that era, that was like when like the Clinton Democrats were kind of demonizing welfare mothers and all that stuff, just like Republicans. And so it's a really good it's a really good kind of piece about class politics, but but also very personal. And I guess one of the things that I think of the most, I mean, obviously, it's really awful on so many different levels. Like, I'm sure that you're feeling all this too, that it's like, and bottom line, like the sort of like first level is it's like, our friend is dead. That's incredibly sad. I mean, that's just like on a personal level, that's just awful. That we all thought we were going to have decades with this guy, and we didn't. But then politically, in terms of media and all that stuff, I think one of the things that's maybe a little connected to that, that I think about, thinking back to him and what he was so good at and all that, is that, he really, like, whether it was this kind of domestic like poverty stuff or the sort of sense of connection to, liberation struggles, in other countries, he felt all of this stuff on like a really visceral level, like this, it really, the way, everything that Lula had done in Brazil, getting to meet him and all that stuff like that really like meant something to him, like on a personal level. And so, I mean, I think he was just incredibly committed, you know, to that political project. But I think he was also like, I think one of the things that made him distinctive, and I mean, this is going to sound kind of funny, is just that like he was also just like really smart about how he pursued it, and he would like and unlike frankly a lot of people that I know who do this, you know, he would really think carefully about what he was going to do before he did it, right? Okay, is this actually advancing this, or am I just like reacting because I'm mad, you know, which is something that I think a lot of us aren't very good at.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the hallmark of the work that he was doing. Because, you know, I was nothing but a regular lib when I first met Mike. I wasn't thinking too deeply about the divides between what working people need and the agenda of, say, the Clinton mafia, right?
Yeah.
They're just not aligned, you know, even though the Democrats are ostensibly what is allegedly the left party of this country, the needs of everyday working people are not aligned with the agenda of corporate Democrats. That's just is what it is. There's no two ways about that. I think what made Mike special was what you just articulated, was his ability to sort of synthesize the issue and come up with a way that people could receive the message. Because, and I keep telling people this, like there's a tendency on the left to care about who's the most well researched, who's the smartest, who's the most right? Like who's the biggest, baddest brain in the room. There's a tendency to try to go that route and completely ignore the concept of communication.
Right.
Effectively communicating your your message, getting people to not want to tune you out. How do you do that? It's not by being pompous and being moralistic and being, you know, just a freaking know-it-all, right? It is by being funny and entertaining and doing impressions and coming up with characters and helping people engage with the subject matter in a way that isn't just, frankly, and I'm not trying to diss academics. Ben Burgis is my man. He's an academic. But we don't have to approach it in some strictly academic fashion. There's a way to meet people where they live. Most people will not go through graduate level courses like that. Like we can't position our, you know, sort of ideologies and how we feel through that academic ass lens, which I think is generally the sort of position and posture that people on the left take. And I think Mike, what his genius was that he eschewed that and said, no, we got to be more plain spoken to the people. Not that he couldn't do that academic stuff with the best of them, because obviously clearly he could, but he had a such a keen understanding that in order to advance the project, we had to be more thoughtful and intentional. I know that word is a buzzword these days, but Mike was absolutely definitional of that. He was intentional about every single thing that he did. He was deliberate. And, you know, that was his favorite thing. We can't be distracted. We can't be distracted by these petty squabbles and dick measuring contests and all of that. We got to be disciplined. We got to stay on message.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that he, you know, and I mean, this is almost kind of why I want to like push back again a little about like the way that some people, like the way that they've talked about him, you know, in the year, you know, since he died. You know, they like, it's almost like, you know, there's this sort of way that I sometimes see people like portraying him, you know, like if I see like memes or something, you know, where they'll have like, I don't know, it'll be like a black and white picture and you'll have that quote about, you know, systems and people and all that stuff. And I like what people are trying to do and remember all of that. But like, I don't know, sometimes I almost get the impression that some people want to make him like Saint Michael or something, you know, it's like,
right.
You know, like the guy, you know, like he had, you know, I mean, you know, he had as many human flaws as anybody, you know.
100%.
You know, I mean, he was, I mean, you know, he definitely had an ego and was very funny about it.
Yes.
He did, I mean, look, I remember, told the story that my show, but it's like, last, all before last, I had, I was in, visiting a friend of mine from graduate school who was living in Brooklyn. We went out for drinks and I invited Michael out to join us. And my friend's wife kind of drunkenly said something nice about Elizabeth Warren, and they got into such a huge argument about it. That was the problem, with working out with my friend,
Man.
So it's like it's not it's not like he was a bodhisattva or something. It's just that he was smart and thoughtful about what was going to help and what wasn't going to help. Which I mean, I guess the reason I think it's worth emphasizing that distinction is that you don't have to be a higher being or something. It's we could all do that, right?
Listen, we don't need gods, right? We don't need deities, right? We don't need Martin Luther King to be a deity. We can take what made him great and what made him one of the greatest Americans this country has ever produced, but we also don't need to send a message let's have 20 different thousand chicks on the road too. I don't know that we need to do that, right? He's a human being. He had his flaws. I'm sure we wish he could have been more, sort of loyal to his wife and his family and all of that. But that doesn't change the great things that the person does. People don't need to be, we don't need God figures. I would hope that people learned this lesson from the Obama thing, where it's we made this guy into a larger than life figure when really he's just a man. He's just a human being. And that's no different than Mike. I think he was a great person, but that doesn't mean he was perfect or you should model your freaking life after the guy, right? It's just about, this is a lesson of a guy who made an impact, and this is the way he went about doing it. And so, we should learn the good lessons from that.
Yeah, certainly shouldn't model your time management skills after him, but he I don't think I ever met him for anything about the years I knew him that he wasn't late for, but I had but yeah, I mean, so what I think some of what this meant in practice, going back to what you're saying, is so yeah, I mean, when he was texting me about somebody or texting you, I'm sure, he could I mean, he could talk shit about people in private, the best of them. I mean, he was, I mean, again, very, very funny and, and when he was doing it, but then when he would criticize maybe even the same person sometimes on the show, right? He wouldn't do that then because he was strategic. He knew that just starting one of these weird beefs that are half political and half personal, which is sometimes it feels certainly the far left, that's all we've been doing since sometime last year, that he knew that wouldn't help anything, that wouldn't advance any of the goals that he cared about, right? So what he would do is, no matter how mad he was initially, about whatever it is, when he went on the show, he would give the best, most thoughtful, version of the critique. He would go out of his way to try to find things that they were right about, and that he could kind of give credit where credit's due about. And sometimes sometimes some of those same people would say later that they actually liked watching those segments because they could tell that he'd really carefully listen to what they had to say, and he wasn't he wasn't just being dismissive, and and he was really good at that, and he was just a genuinely compassionate person, genuinely thoughtful person, and he it definitely didn't hurt that that I mean he was also definitely the funniest person that I've known.
Yeah, again, just the way that he would deploy his comedy in order to disarm people while also getting a point across, second to none. And I think it just spoke to his visionary nature, right? And again, I'm not saying that to basically deify the guy, but he was visionary about this specific purpose. Not that he was visionary in every single part of his life, but this specific mission of advancing the cause of poor and working people, he definitely understood we need to get different kinds of people saying the message. We need to de-emphasize the morality of all of this. We need to identify who the common enemy so clearly is. And, we need to have a message of inclusion, solidarity, and not this Poindexter shit that a bunch of other people want to do that is so alienating to so many people, right? Who would otherwise be down with us. And to me, that was the guy's greatest strength, his vision for what direction we should be taking the cause ultimately. And, that's what I'll always remember him for. Of course, he was a generous guy. Of course, he was thoughtful. Of course, he cared about people. But, I think what he was doing, what he dedicated his life to, just admirable in the way he carried it out. And of course, we all lost the day that we lost Mike a year ago yesterday. So thank you, Ben, man, for coming on. I truly appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. Please plug some of your stuff. Tell the people where they could find you, please.
Yeah. So write a column for Jacobin, jacobinmag.com, host a show called Give Them an Argument, and just search for that on YouTube. I guess that's what everybody does anyway. Nobody really types in the URL or wherever you get podcasts. Wrote a couple books, most recently Canceling Comedians While the World Burns. And most importantly, on the show, once a month, we talk about The Sopranos.
Yes, sir.
With you and Nando and Mike Racine. So that's always like unlocked by the end of the month, but Give Them an Argument patrons can get it early. So it's very going, taking a really slow tour through the show.
Yep.
But I'm very happy to do that because, I'm sure, that itself makes me like I had 10,000 conversations with the guy about that show.
Right.
So, anyway, thank you so much, brother.
Of course, anytime. And that's our show for this week. We'll see you guys next week. I think Nando will be back from his European excursion by then. For Ben Burgis, for the producer, Sean, I'm Big Waz. We're out of here. Peace.